Are you thinking of buying a house, but have heard how competitive the real estate market is right now? Well, here's how to get your offer accepted. Okay, now how do they do that? Number one, do your research and talk to your lender and realtor ahead of time. Reason it's important to have that conversation with your lender ahead of time and understand exactly what you can afford and what your payment will be is so when the time comes, you're ready to act quickly. When speaking with a lender, it is important to also talk with your local lenders that are very familiar with your market, have a good reputation in that market, and have the ability to get loans approved and closed quickly. Some of the big national banks don't have the same nimbleness and flexibility to get your loan approved and closed quickly, the same way that a small local bank would. Number two, time is of the essence and be ready to move quickly. We suggest seeing homes the very day that they come on the market so that gives you plenty of time to make an educated decision, gather all the information that you need ahead of time, and put yourself in the best position to put a winning offer forward. Let me give you an example of how time is of the essence. Oftentimes, a home will be put in what's called coming soon status, meaning that the property is getting ready or not ready to be on the market. You can't show a home in coming soon status, but it does give you a date that the home will become available. So let's say that house that you like is coming available in 10 days from now. We highly suggest that we make plans to go see that house as soon as it comes on the market, that very day. The reason being is we can go there, and if you like the house, we can get a pre-inspection done that day or the next day. And on a side note, if you want to know more about pre-inspections, check out my video on the 4 most common types of contingencies in a real estate contract. Seeing it on the same day gives you the opportunity to get the exact numbers that you'll need from your lender, and more importantly, most offers don't start to trickle in on the very first day. So if you go in and you like the house, you've done your pre-inspection, and so you feel comfortable moving forward, what we can do is put a little bit of pressure on the seller with our shot clock method. What our shot clock method is that we use for a lot of buyers is, let's say a home is listed at $500,000. Based on all the data that we've gathered, we know they listed it kind of low, knowing that they get lots of offers and it would shoot up to $550,000, $575,000, $600,000, whatever it may be. What we would typically suggest for a buyer is saying, hey, we know this one's probably going to go for $550,000 or more. We'd be very surprised if it didn't. However, the seller doesn't know exactly where it's going to go yet because it just came on the market. So before all the offers start to trickle in, what we suggest doing is giving them an attractive offer a little bit below where it's going to go. So let's say $525,000. Typically there'll be very little contingencies in that offer because we've already done our home inspection, working with a great lender, so we feel good about our financing contingency not being there, things of that nature. We want to make it as strong as possible where we can go in and say, you have 5 hours to accept this, or whatever it may be, whatever seems appropriate at that time. And what that does is it gives the seller a decision to make based on bird in hand. It's like, wow, I've got this amazing offer at $525,000. It's only good for this amount of time. Maybe I should take it because I don't know what the future holds and I don't know what's coming in. What that does is it allows our negotiations and pressures that we've done to get you the best deal possible on a house that you really, really love. Most sellers and most people in general have that fear of missing out. They have that fear of, oh no, if I don't take this, it's gonna be gone. And they see $525,000, which is a lot of money, right in front of them. And not always will they accept this, not always will it work. And if it doesn't work, we just regroup and revise our offer. It's not like, to be honest with you, it actually goes away in most scenarios. If they don't accept it, they say, no, we want to wait for the offer deadline. That's okay. We have a strategy for that as well. But this is one way that we try to beat out the multiple offers and waiting and just kind of putting our name in a hat, which can often happen waiting for the offer deadline. I mentioned getting out there the very first day so that we can have a pre-inspection and give an offer with as few contingencies as needed. One of those biggest contingencies always being a home inspection. So what we suggest doing is getting out there, doing a pre-inspection, which is essentially doing your home inspection ahead of time. So instead of giving an offer that's contingent on a home inspection, which gives risk to the seller, meaning that if it goes under contract, you don't like what you see in the home inspection, you can back out, and then their contract is no longer valid. This says, well, I've already done my home inspection. Everything was okay and acceptable to me. Here's my offer without a home inspection contingency. So it is giving you that protection to make sure that there's no big ticket items that need to be repaired, that there's no major issues with the house, but it's also giving that seller the confidence that, hey, we've already done our due diligence, everything is okay here, let's keep this moving. Number 3, present an attractive and strong initial offer. Working with a strong agent is very important. and a strong agent will have constant communication with the listing agent to find out what's really important to that seller. For example, it's not always just price. We have seen many times where we are in a multiple offer situation and the highest price isn't the one that the seller selects. Having that communication with the listing agent and the seller to find out what's important to them, such as maybe there's a family heirloom, a chandelier that just means the world to them. It's been passed down from generation to generation, that if you didn't have that communication with the listing agent, you wouldn't know to include that in the contract saying the seller can have it. Or let's say the seller needs to stay in the house for a few months and you need to give them a rent back. And you find out that if they have to pay for that rent back, it's going to be very hard for the seller. There's ways around that. There's certain leeways and times and free rent backs and things that we can offer that won't cost the buyer money and also won't cost the seller money. The seller may really need a quick settlement. So if you don't have that constant communication with that listing agent and say, hey, when do they have to settle? What's important to them? If I settle in 10 days, will they take my offer versus this other offer? Finding out exactly what that seller is looking for and what's attractive to them is so important and can oftentimes save you quite a bit of money, especially in a competitive market. It also can give you, as a buyer, more protection. Let me give you an example. Sometimes you'll have a seller that is just so proud of their house, has taken immaculate care of it, and they don't care if there's a home inspection. They gladly welcome it. We've seen it. It's rare, but it's definitely there in the sense where sellers like, oh, we don't care if there's a home inspection on it. Well, if that's not gonna weed your offer out from the other one or set you apart by waiving your home inspection, then having this information is so valuable because then you can have a home inspection versus a pre-inspection. Don't guess on price. What we mean on that is a question that I hear so often is, what will this house go for? Well, there's obviously no crystal ball or way to exactly know that. However, there is what's called an escalation clause. And an escalation clause, instead of guessing and just throwing out your best number, what an escalation clause does is we say, well, we're gonna come in at, let's use the $500,000 example. We're gonna come in at $500,000, but we're willing to go up to $560,000 if any of these, let's say 7 other offers are higher than where we are. So let's say the second highest offer was at $550,000. What we do ahead of time is pick an escalating factor. So let's say our escalating factor is $5,000 because we want to make it look attractive to the seller. So we say, I'm willing to come in $5,000 higher than any other offer as long as you show me proof that that other offer was willing to go to $550,000. What this would do is escalate our offer to $550,000, but here's the best part of it. On an escalation clause, as a buyer, you still get that last decision. That does not mean that you automatically have to accept $550,000, but what it does do is give you that last decision. So instead of guessing ahead of time and saying, well, it'll probably go for $550,000 or $570,000 or $580,000 or whatever number it may be, you say, well, here's where I want to come in. Here's where I'm willing to go. I want to make sure that there's proof that it will go that high, that I'm not just overpaying by $30,000 or whatever it may be. And it gives you the last decision, which is so important, where you can actually make an educated decision where you're comfortable saying, okay, you know what, at $550,000, I want this house. Let's go ahead with it. Or since you're not obligated, let's say you were only willing to go to $550,000, but in your escalation clause, you put $580,000 and it went to $575,000. Well, you have the last decision and you might say, nope, it went higher than I'm actually comfortable going to. And then you don't have to accept it and move forward with the contract with no penalty or any recourse for you. And quick TV timeout. If you're in the market and considering buying a home, having a professional realtor that really understands the contract and the contingencies and be able to walk you through what's best for you and best for your family in this process is absolutely essential. If you ever need my help or guidance or just want to talk and pick my brain, you can reach me on my cell, 301-452-3245, or at any of the links below. Now back to the video. And lastly, maximize your strengths as a buyer. What do I mean by this? Well, for example, if you are a buyer that is in a strong liquid position, you have a lot of cash on hand, and you're going to put 30% down, what we suggest is we need to emphasize that strength in our offer. So for a buyer like that, it is very unlikely you really need a financing contingency, or it's very unlikely that you need an appraisal contingency, as you still have that 10% delta between 20% and 30%. So for a buyer in that situation, waiving things like a financing contingency or an appraisal contingency oftentimes is the right move. Now, not for everyone. Everyone's situation is different. But for a buyer in that situation, it is often appropriate or okay and very little risk to waive contingencies like that, which puts you in the best position to win the offer. Another example on maximizing your strengths would be a salaried employee. Let's say that you don't have the 30% to put down, but you do have a very strong employment history where you've been with the government or a very stable employer for a long period of time, and the odds of you losing your job are very, very, very low. What I would say to that is someone like that waiving a financing contingency when you've already been pre-approved and the lender says, yeah, there's 99% chance this loan's going through. Someone like that taking that very, 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 very small risk to make your offer more attractive to get that dream home would be, in many situations, an appropriate move to make. Now, everyone's situation is different, which is again why it's important to work with a professional that really can help you walk through these different scenarios and outcomes. But these are just a few examples that we have of maximizing your strengths as a buyer when writing an offer. And lastly, working with an agent that's a strong negotiator, that has worked with many buyers and is able to navigate each situation and the nuances that come with it is so important, especially in a market like today. For a little bit more on that and a little bit more details, see my other video, Why You Need a Buyer's Agent. Thanks for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.